For 29 years, Ethan had built his life around Sophia, the woman he believed to be his soulmate. They had a love story that felt like destiny. College sweethearts who married young, raised a daughter, and built a life filled with shared dreams. But on an otherwise ordinary evening, Ethan's world shattered in an instant. He arrived home early that day, a bouquet of bright lilies in hand, a surprise for Sophia to celebrate her recent promotion at work. As he stepped into the house, he heard her voice, soft but unmistakably amused, drifting from the living room. Curious, he paused just out of sight. "I don't know how you do it, Natalie," Sophia said, her tone tinged with mischief. "Keeping it all under wraps like that. Honestly, I've gotten away with so much, it's almost laughable." Ethan frowned, unsure of what he was hearing. He leaned closer, his heart quickening. Sophia continued, her voice dropping into a hushed confession. "For men, Natalie. For affairs, and Ethan hasn't suspected a thing. He's so trusting." She chuckled. "I love him in my way, but sometimes love isn't enough, you know? I needed something more." Ethan's breath hitched, and the flowers fell from his hand, landing silently on the hardwood floor. Every word cut into him like a blade. Sophia, the woman he'd shared his life with for nearly 3 decades, had been living a double life. He wanted to burst into the room and demand answers, but something stopped him. Instead, he stepped back quietly, his pulse pounding in his ears, and recorded the rest of her conversation. If there was more to learn, he needed to hear it, no matter how painful. Sophia's words grew sharper, revealing the depth of her betrayal. "I don't regret it, honestly. I've learned how to keep the balance. Ethan is reliable, but he's not thrilling. He doesn't challenge me like they did." Ethan's entire body trembled with rage and disbelief. The woman he thought he knew, the woman he had trusted above all others, was a stranger to him now. Ethan stumbled back into the kitchen, his mind spinning. He pressed the stop button on his phone's recording app, clutching it like a lifeline. The weight of Sophia's words felt like a punch to the gut. For men, for betrayals, and all while he had been living under the delusion that they shared a love worth envying. He needed time to think, to process what he had just learned. Ethan quietly stepped out of the house, his hands trembling as he started his car and drove aimlessly through the night. Every memory of Sophia, every laugh, every intimate moment, now felt tainted. How had he been so blind? How had he missed the signs? The following days were a blur of suppressed rage and despair. Ethan went through the motions at work and home, but inside, a storm brewed. He replayed her conversation over and over, dissecting her words, each repetition fueling the growing fire within him. He decided he needed to confront her. But Ethan wasn't a man who acted impulsively. Confrontation wasn't enough. No, Sophia had stripped him of his dignity, and he wasn't going to let her walk away without consequences. If she thought she could continue her charade unscathed, she was gravely mistaken. Ethan began his plan with meticulous precision. His first step was subtle surveillance. He combed through their financial records, looking for unusual charges, hotels, restaurants, or anything that might hint at her double life. He watched her patterns closely, noting the evenings she claimed to be working late or spending time with her friends. Each piece of evidence added another layer to the foundation of his strategy. But the real breakthrough came when he finally accessed her phone. A late-night opportunity arose when Sophia left it charging in the living room while she took a shower. Ethan's hands shook as he navigated her messages. What he found confirmed his suspicions. Explicit texts, photos, and plans with men whose names he didn't recognize. Each exchange was a dagger to his already wounded heart. Among the messages, one stood out. A man named Daniel had been her most recent affair, and judging by their conversations, he believed he was more than just a fling. "I can't wait to see you again," Daniel had written. "When are you finally going to leave him for me?" Sophia's response was chilling. "Soon, I promise. Just waiting for the right moment." Ethan's grip tightened on the phone. Not only had she betrayed him, but now she was actively planning to discard him like yesterday's news. That was the moment Ethan decided there would be no reconciliation, no quiet departure. He wasn't just going to confront her. He was going to destroy her world as thoroughly as she had destroyed his. The next morning, Ethan played the part of the doting husband. He kissed Sophia on the cheek before leaving for work, masking the disgust that churned within him. "You're in a good mood," she noted with a smile, oblivious to the storm brewing beneath his calm exterior. "Just excited for the weekend," he replied, his voice steady. Over the next week, Ethan set the stage for his revenge. He visited a lawyer, ensuring every step he took was within legal bounds. He transferred half of their joint savings into a personal account and began documenting everything he had uncovered. With the evidence he had collected, text messages, recorded conversations, and financial discrepancies, he built an airtight case. But Ethan wasn't content with just a legal victory. He wanted Sophia to feel the sting of her actions, to experience the humiliation and betrayal she had inflicted on him. He started by reaching out to Daniel. "Daniel, this is Ethan," he wrote in an anonymous email, attaching screenshots of Sophia's texts. "Thought you want to know the truth about the woman you've been seeing. She's not leaving her husband. She's stringing you along like the others before you." The email was blunt, designed to provoke a reaction. Ethan didn't care about Daniel's feelings. He was just a pawn in the bigger game. The next phase of Ethan's plan involved Sophia's social circle. He knew her friends and colleagues saw her as a model wife and professional. Using a separate email account, he began sending anonymous messages with evidence of her affairs, making sure the truth spread without revealing his involvement. By the time Ethan was ready to confront Sophia, her carefully constructed facade had already begun to crumble. He chose a quiet evening at home, when their daughter was out, and there would be no interruptions. Sophia greeted him with her usual warmth, completely unaware of the storm about to break. "We need to talk," Ethan said, his tone colder than she'd ever heard. Her smile faltered. "What's wrong?" "I know everything," he said, pulling out his phone and playing the recording of her conversation with Natalie. The color drained from her face as her own words filled the room. Ethan, I can explain," she stammered, tears welling in her eyes. "Don't," he snapped, his voice sharp. "Don't insult me by pretending there's an explanation for this. For men, Sophia. And you didn't even have the decency to end it before planning to replace me." Her tears flowed freely now, but Ethan felt no sympathy. He had spent days drowning in sorrow. Now, all he felt was cold determination. "You've destroyed our family," he continued. "But you're not walking away from this unscathed." Before she could respond, Ethan handed her a folder containing the divorce papers and the evidence he had gathered. "You'll sign these, and you'll leave this house. Everything you've built on lies is falling apart, Sophia. And when I'm done, you'll wish you'd never taken me for granted." Sophia sat frozen, the weight of Ethan's words bearing down on her like an avalanche. She reached for the folder, her trembling hands betraying the confidence she usually carried. As she flipped through the pages, her face turned pale. "Ethan, please, this doesn't have to be like this," she pleaded. "We can work through this. I made mistakes, yes, but we've built a life together." Ethan's laugh was cold, devoid of the warmth she had once known. "Mistakes? You call four affairs mistakes?" "No, Sophia. You built a life on lies, and now it's crumbling. This is over." For a moment, Sophia's expression changed. The guilt gave way to something sharper, defensiveness. "You're not perfect, Ethan. You've been distant for years, always focused on work. Maybe if you'd paid more attention." "Don't you dare," Ethan interrupted, his voice like steel. "Don't you dare blame me for your choices. I was there, Sophia. I gave you everything, and this is how you repay me? No, this is on you." Sophia fell silent, realizing there was no path to manipulate her way out of this. "I've already contacted a lawyer," Ethan continued. "You'll get your share, but don't expect to walk away with everything. I've made sure that." Her eyes widened in panic. "What do you mean? I have rights too, Ethan?" "Of course you do," he said coolly. "But rights don't include the luxury of pretending this didn't happen. I've already sent evidence to your employer and the charity board you're so proud to serve on. You might want to prepare for questions about the kind of person they've been associating with." Sophia's breath hitched. "You didn't?" "Oh, I did." "You didn't just betray me. You betrayed everyone who believed in you. The saintly Sophia, the perfect wife, the charitable woman with a heart of gold. That image is gone now, and it's your own doing. As the realization of Ethan's vengeance began to sink in, Sophia's tears turned from sorrow to anger. "You're trying to ruin me." "No, Sophia. You did that yourself," Ethan replied. "I'm just making sure the truth isn't hidden anymore." Over the next few weeks, Ethan's carefully orchestrated plan unfolded. Sophia's world, once a perfectly curated image of success and respectability, began to unravel. Her workplace, after reviewing the evidence sent anonymously, decided to terminate her contract, citing a breach of the organization's ethical standards. The charity board similarly asked her to step down. Her once supportive friends began to distance themselves, their trust shattered by the revelations. Daniel, the most recent man in her life, confronted her in public, furious about being strung along. The argument quickly became a spectacle, further tarnishing Sophia's reputation. But Ethan wasn't done yet. He used every legal avenue available to ensure the divorce settlement was as favorable to him as possible. Sophia was left with a fraction of what she had hoped for, forced to move into a modest apartment while Ethan kept the house they had built together. As Sophia's life descended into chaos, Ethan began to rebuild. He poured his energy into his career, taking on a new role that reignited his passion for work. He reconnected with old friends, men and women he had lost touch with during the years he had devoted entirely to Sophia and their marriage. Ethan also began to mend his relationship with their daughter, Ava. Initially, she had been devastated by the news of her mother's betrayal, but Ethan made sure she felt supported and loved. Together, they found a new rhythm, one free of the tension and secrets that had once plagued their home. But the most surprising development came when Ethan met someone new. Her name was Lily, a colleague he had worked with briefly years ago. Their connection was instant and electric, built on honesty and mutual respect, something Ethan had almost forgotten was possible. Lily wasn't just a distraction. She became a reminder of what Ethan deserved, a partner who valued him for who he was, not as a convenience or a safety net. Unbeknownst to Ethan, Sophia wasn't willing to let go entirely. As her life crumbled, her anger festered, and she began plotting her own retaliation. She wasn't ready to accept the role of the villain in their story. Sophia tried to manipulate Ava, painting herself as the victim in the divorce. But Ava, now old enough to see through the lies, shut her down firmly. "Mom, you destroyed Dad. You don't get to rewrite the story." Sophia's attempts to contact Ethan directly were met with silence. He had blocked her on every platform, refusing to engage. But Sophia wasn't deterred. She began spreading rumors about him, hoping to tarnish his newfound happiness. Ethan, however, had anticipated this. He had documented her actions carefully, ensuring that if she tried to harm his reputation, he could respond decisively. When Sophia leaked a fabricated story to one of their mutual acquaintances, Ethan countered with the truth, forwarding the same evidence he had used during their divorce proceedings. Sophia's lies unraveled before they could gain traction, further isolating her. Months turned into a year, and Ethan finally felt like himself again. Sophia's attempts at revenge had fizzled out, leaving her more alienated than ever. Meanwhile, Ethan found peace and joy in his new life with Lily and Ava. One evening, as Ethan watched the sunset from his porch, Lily by his side, he reflected on the journey that had brought him here. He had been broken, betrayed, and humiliated, but he had emerged stronger. Sophia, once the center of his world, was now just a chapter in his story, a painful reminder of what he had overcome. "Are you okay?" Lily asked, squeezing his hand gently. Ethan smiled, feeling the weight of the past finally lift. "I am," he said. "For the first time in years, I really am." As months passed, Sophia found herself in a life she no longer recognized. Her career was gone. Her social circles had all but vanished, and the family she once considered unshakable was irreparably fractured. Alone in her modest apartment, she spent her days oscillating between regret and resentment. Sophia made one last desperate attempt to regain control. She arranged a surprise visit to Ava, hoping to rekindle some semblance of their bond. Armed with a scrapbook of happy memories and carefully rehearsed apologies, she knocked on her daughter's door. When Ava answered, her expression was unreadable. She listened as Sophia tried to explain herself, her voice trembling with emotion. Ava, I know I made mistakes. I was selfish and foolish, but I never stopped loving you. Can't we just start over? Sophia's voice broke as she held out the scrapbook. Ava took a deep breath, her gaze steady. Mom, I don't hate you. I never will. But you need to understand that love isn't enough. Dad gave you everything, and you threw it away. I can't pretend that didn't happen. Sophia's face crumpled. But I'm still your mother, and I'll always love you for that. Ava interrupted, her tone firm but kind. But I need to love you from a distance. It's not just about Dad. It's about trust, and you broke it. With both of us, Sophia left in tears, realizing that the bridges she had burned were not so easily rebuilt. Meanwhile, Ethan's life continued to blossom. His relationship with Lily grew deeper, rooted in mutual respect and an openness he had never experienced before. She became not just his partner, but his confidant, someone who encouraged him to confront his lingering pain rather than bury it. One evening, over a quiet dinner, Ethan opened up about the hardest parts of his past. I never thought I'd find peace after what Sophia did, he admitted. There were times I wondered if I'd ever trust anyone again. Lily reached across the table, her fingers brushing his. You've been through so much, Ethan, but you're here, stronger than ever. And you don't have to face anything alone anymore. Her words resonated deeply, and for the first time in years, Ethan allowed himself to hope. Driven by desperation, Sophia tried one final, reckless act of revenge. She leaked a fabricated story to the press, portraying Ethan as emotionally abusive during their marriage. The narrative painted her as a victim, hoping to regain public sympathy. But Ethan was prepared. With the evidence he had carefully compiled over the months, he issued a statement through his lawyer, disproving every one of Sophia's claims. He included testimony from Ava and close friends who had witnessed the truth firsthand. The backlash was swift and brutal. Instead of redeeming herself, Sophia became a cautionary tale, her lies exposed for the world to see. Ethan, however, chose not to gloat. She's already lost everything, he told Lily. I don't need to add to her suffering. I just want her out of my life. A year later, Ethan and Lily married in an intimate ceremony, surrounded by close friends and family. Ava stood proudly at her father's side, her relationship with him stronger than ever. The wedding wasn't about erasing the past, but celebrating the resilience that had brought them here. Sophia wasn't invited. By then, she had moved to another city, retreating into anonymity. The last Ethan heard of her was through mutual acquaintances. She was working a low-paying job and keeping to herself. Ethan's life, however, was filled with light and laughter once again. On their honeymoon, as he and Lily walked hand in hand along a sunlit beach, Ethan reflected on how far he had come. I used to think I'd never recover, he told her. But now, I realized that Sophia didn't define me. Her betrayal wasn't the end of my story. It was just the beginning of something better. Lily smiled, her eyes shining with love. You deserve this, Ethan. You deserve happiness. And for the first time in years, Ethan knew she was right.